Hey, everybody, this is Nick. I'm here with Carl Binger. You've met Carl before. Hey, Carl.
Good evening.
Did you have a good Christmas, New Year, all that kind of stuff?
It was good. It was good, but I'm ready to get back to normalcy. I was just telling somebody the other day, like, you know, that Christmas song where it says, and mom and dad can hardly wait for school to start again. I get it. Like, it's not so much they're going back to school, but it's like you get back to some normalcy and the kids get to go back to school. But
Yeah, it's a black hole for a couple of weeks.
yeah,
How's the farm doing? It's been a minute.
it's good. We're doing really good. We're starting to get a groove, I think.
Did some add-ons this year.
Yep, got another greenhouse, and we're starting earlier. We got some maturing that we conquered in 2022, met some new battles, and hopefully won't have to fight them this year. And if so, we know how to be prepared for them.
You learn a little bit
Better.
every year, don't you?
Yeah, it is.
So you have a lot on your shoulders tonight because you're going to be every farmer's advocate that we're going to discuss here tonight. So you're acting on behalf of everybody in farming, and I'm acting on behalf of an equipment manufacturer and some of the things that we deal with. So what we're going to do is we just sent out an email a couple of days ago, and we asked people, hey, what kind of products are you looking for? What kind of resources? What could we do to help you, as far as building up your farm business? What can we do as far as the content creative side? So thought it would be fun. I've always wanted to do like a Q&A kind of show from them, and this is like a good opportunity. So I'm going to read some of these questions that we got. You kind of know us and know the background. You've been around long enough to know some of the ins and outs, but you're also still daily farming. And I thought this would just be a good chance for you to add on or maybe talk a little bit more through these questions so we can do a little bit more than just surface level. So the first one is something you and I talked about last week, which is I would like to be able to heat my hoop house economically for the winter. So the first one is from Greg, and he said that he would like to be able to heat his hoop house economically for the winter. Any suggestions?
Wow.
My gut is the economics would be determined in the ability to sell and the crop in which we're selling. So if it costs $500 a month to heat your hoop house, you're going to have to bring in enough income to not only cover your expenses and your labor and anything else that you normally should be covering anyway, plus that extra expense of that heat.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of variables as you're alluding to and ways to compute that, but
yeah, and I know that's not what he asked,
Yeah.
but that's where I'm starting.
right. I mean, because the first thing I thought was, well, you have options, the catalog, you've got the most economical, which means probably a lot of work because you're
And a lot of infrastructure.
right. Well, I was thinking like even you got some people that just get those big blue barrels, plastic barrels, right? And they line their greenhouses up. And so the sun during the day heats those barrels up. And then at night it keeps,
Until
the
you have a
greenhouse.
cloudy day.
Right. And then also now you just lost a whole bunch of space in your greenhouse because you're lined up, you just took up, a good portion of your greenhouse with.
Heating a greenhouse, it's like anything else. There's pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to find like a perfect solution. So the first thing I like to do when I get this, like, and I talk to somebody on the phone, is like, do you have a market? There's no market. Why are we hitting a hoop house? Is it more economical to furlough the hoop house, not put in any labor, not put in any expense as far as water, seed, soil, whatever the case may be, plus you're saving the labor. So there's also that option. And I think we don't often start with, is that even possible, or is that even a good recommendation? Because if you don't have a market,
Right.
you don't have a place to sell your vegetables, i.e. you don't have a place to sell. So you're not going to generate the income you would have to heat the hoop house.
If you're a hobbyist, that's one way to, you just want to start some seeds early. And so you're trying to heat your greenhouse. But yeah, if you're doing this as a farmer, a commercial farmer, to do that economically, you do have to figure out what's, your inputs and your outputs, how much you're going to get out of what you're putting into it. The first one that we bought, it was a used one, was the people heated with wood, and I know some other, I think we know a mutual person who does that as well, but they have people out there all night stoking these, with
I
these
can't
furnaces.
imagine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having to do that.
You're right. And it's just so, and you have those. I think actually just this past fall, you had told me some farmer was doing that. One of the customers there was, they were trying to get away from that that concept of having somebody always go out and stoke that fire, for that. So, I mean, that's a little absurd, but if you're diehard and that's what if you've got no money, but you've got that infrastructure, you have to do that, but that's just not really practical.
I think now I'll actually answer the question. So the question is, how are we going to heat this hoop house?
Yeah.
And it's again a matter of layers for me. So first of all, the first layer is changing the crop. Let's assume you have a market and a way in
Mhm.
which to sell, and you need to do grow. You're going to change your market. You're not going to be growing tomatoes in January and
Right.
February. You're going to switch to more leafy greens, kale, some type of brassicas. Also, I considering like cabbage is great in the wintertime, but it's probably best outside because of the amount of space it comes out. A head of cabbage can grow up 2-3 foot around, and you're getting a
Mhm.
head that's going to sell for what,
Couple bucks,
three
maybe.
bucks
Yeah.
maybe, if you're lucky. Why would you dedicate so much inside infrastructure for something that's going to bring in so little? The next step, without adding any other structure to the hoop house, would be microclimates. So you could put frost blanket in there. You could do heavy mulch. You're protecting the roots more so than you're protecting the leaves of the plant because it's outside and it's not going to be getting a frost anyway. But by the time you add a mulch, by the time you add frost blankets, you're insulating the air directly around the roots and the
Right.
plant itself.
And that's very economical. Our first year, that's what we did. We had a cheap little Harbor Freight 6x8 plastic polycarbonate greenhouse inside of our, hoop house.
Right.
And that was great because I had a little 5K electric space heater, ran an extension cord 50 feet to the house, and built some shelves in there. And it was great, but it was only for germination. Like we weren't growing stuff, but it was good
Well,
for
and if you're
germination.
germinating, you can be
Mhm.
under heat mats. Plus,
Right.
if you're building a little substructure inside of a hoop house, because we're just germinating at this point, and then you have the heat mats, and then you have, which is basically heating the soil, which is the goal, and then you have a cover of some type. Like we talked last week about, you have all these benches. You're trying to germinate some stuff that you probably need a little bit more heat for. You put a thermostat in, crank up the heat on the heat mats for the soil so the seed itself is getting the right temperature. But the ambient air, we talked about building a substructure on top of those
Mhm.
benches to then heat with a small electric heater. And now you're not having to get a propane tank, utilities
Right.
ran out there, because it's not just the propane or the heat or the wood, it's the utilities of, or it's the cost of running the utilities,
Right.
paying the electricity.
I can tell you this, I do not sleep well. So we have a couple structures that are heated, and one of them just has single layer. Well, they actually all have single layer, but the one that I run the heat in the most, I do not sleep well at night knowing that heater's running because I know I'm just burning money. Like
Oh yeah.
I sit there and just think all the cracks, in the walls, the holes and things. And I
But
just,
but to your credit, the thing that you're heating is where all your crop money is, and
right.
that's where all your planting is,
Yeah.
and you still have things that you're cutting and come and get. Like you have a bunch of kale in there that you're taking to an active market
Right.
that you're very busy on Saturdays, even at this time of year. So you have the market. I mean, we've started to cover all your bases already.
Yeah.
And I also laugh like when you called me the other day, because one of the times that you and I were putting plastic out at Bond's house on that 30-footer, he said, "I think my hoop house cover is more repair tape than it is."
Yeah.
So I know there's all these micro holes, and you start thinking about that. Somebody inevitably one night, for sure that one day this season you're going to go out and a door is going to be left open.
Right.
It happens. It's just
Mhm.
it's that human factor. So do you have enough of a buffer to when that happens that you're not going to lose the entire thing? I think so.
And to add on to that, it's like once you take the step and you have that, like it's daunting to think about heating, like
Right.
how am I going to do this? Is it going to pay for itself? But math and market, math and your market should help you rely on that. And like I feel so much more confident and comfortable with what the decision we make, because every year now we have started earlier. This is the earliest now we've started because of how prepared we are with heating and
But it's taken you this many years to build up the stuff that you need
right.
to do that. You couldn't have done that year one. And
Mhm.
it's kind of good, kind of bad. You've had a couple of years that you've just been punched in the mouth with the weather.
Right.
That we've had severe weather. We're most likely going to have it again, if not twice a season or an extended period.
Right.
But now you have the stuff that the business has paid for along the way that you've been able to do
Mhm.
that. Another thing that you can do is we recently put out a video of Bob Wells' custom end walls, where a lot of people, especially northern growers, are going to hard side their north end wall. You don't get any light coming in there anyway, so you're not blocking any light,
Yeah.
but then you're blocking the most cold weather that you could possibly getting from a win perspective at least. And I think that helps knock down quite a bit as well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was just thinking about that today. I was looking because I'm thinking, I ask the same question to this guy every day. I'm out there, especially at night when things are cooling down. How can I just keep stuff alive without heating and getting creative? And today I was like, I've got some extra frost blankets material that I got from y'all a few years ago, and I thought maybe I could just line up that back north wall, and cover that to help insulate some of that. And then I started thinking, there's really no need for me to have sheer plastic on this back wall. It does no good. It was cheap, so I'd be curious too if that's something coming in the future. I would likely take you up on that, or I mean, I guess you could even just completely plywall it in. I mean, if you want, if you've got the resources, whatever you've got.
Yeah, and we talked about that in wall, and you want to side it with the right thing. I don't like OSB or chipboard because it's an interior glue. You don't want to put it on the exterior side, and it's just going to delaminate and look terrible after a while.
Yeah.
But look, even putting weather stripping around your door frames and your doors, I mean, that's certainly going to help. Think about like a house. You feel that draft coming in. Same thing with the plants, in the greenhouse. Double layer plastic, it gets brought up a lot. And I struggled even with you the other day saying, is this the best use of money and time and everything involved? I think where we're at giving on the crops, it's 50-50. I had it on mine, but I was hard panel in walls. I was propane heating, and I was growing tomatoes year round, which is bonkers. But because of how I was selling them, I needed tomatoes. B, I was the only one that had tomatoes. And C, I was selling such a premium product that it did justify the cost of the propane plus the knowing I would have a decline in production,
right,
and accounting for that to make it worthwhile. So double layer for me, I was heating. It was a premium crop with a sellable market, made sense. For you, we came to the conclusion that substructure would probably be a better idea.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw you off because I just bought plastic because I'm going to do it.
And look, but that's the thing. You came to me, we hashed it out. Yeah. We talked about a couple different things. At the end of the day, it's your decision, it's your farm, it's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. So whatever you decide is right.
Right.
It's hard for us to give anybody a definite answer because we're not there. We don't see it. It's over the phone. Pictures never do it justice. So we can offer some insights, and just like we're doing here, things to think about. But at the end of the day, pulling the trigger and signing that check or running the credit, who writes a check anymore, but who runs the credit card, that's on you.
Right. Yeah. But it was still, it was, here you are, a distributor of these products, and you were telling me, coaching me, saying it may not be beneficial, whereas, so you're on the farmer side. It's like, you could have said, yeah, buy that and buy all this other stuff too while you're at it, and so I very much appreciate that.
That's one thing I'm super proud about the entire team is we're not going to sell you stuff just for the sake of selling it. Because, look, our reputation's on the line, you know what I mean? We're trying to be as open as a book as possible doing stuff like this. Yeah. So, yeah, you got to look at it from all angles, but at the end of the day, it's your choice.
Yep, absolutely. So I don't know if we answered that question.
Yeah, we beat that one to death.
Yeah.
And we could say more, but yeah, we'll move on. So the next question is from Crit. I would love to see some medium-sized cell starting pots somewhere between 2.5 and 5 inches. And we got actually this question 2 or 3 different times. Not only is everybody going to be happy once, they're going to be happy twice. We have 2 sizes in between the 2.5 inch pot and the 5 inch. We're going to have one before the other. These molds are expensive to do, right? And so bootstrap farmer, we're a bootstrap company. We don't really take on any investors in anything, so we're reinvesting back. So we have to do these things one at a time. So these 2 sizes are coming out. The first one is going to be the smaller. It's a 3-inch pot. 18 of them will fit inside of a 1020 container. I can't right this second think of the next size, but I believe it's a 4-inch that's in between our 5-inch pots that we did at your place. Right. And then these 2.5 to 3-inch pots.
So will they have the holders, so like in the 1020 trays?
So the smaller ones will have a holder insert. The other ones, they're made to fit nicely, so they're snugged up.
Nice. All right. So, well, that's good. I like both those sizes, and you can definitely pot up or pot on from that 2.5 to that 5. But it does seem like a natural, there should be something right in the middle of those two.
Well, and there's other reasons, like a lot of plant resellers or ornamental resellers, they need a smaller, 18-inch count pot, and that's that's pretty industry standard. So
Yeah.
wanted to start with that one first, move on to the next. But very shortly, I would say June, July type of thing. We should have those for everybody.
Nice.
Next question is from Miriam, and she says, "I would." And this is another one. We got a couple of versions of this, but I really would like a peat moss version of the 5x5 shallow microgreen trays. I can't find a source for them anywhere. So this is one of those ones from a manufacturing standpoint. We do metal very well. We do injection molding very well. Um, Peat moss, it does have that stigma of there's the whole ecological side is, we're stripping peat bogs and the environmental damage. So we don't really want to get into peat moss at all. Secondly, we would have to bring that in from Canada, which means import duties and taxes over here that we don't want to mess with. And then to fabricate that into a pot, that's a whole new technology that we can't do that where we do metalworking. We can't do that in our warehouse. We can't do that where we do injection molding. It's too much that other companies are already working on. It's just it doesn't seem like a good fit for us, given all of those plus some other reasons why we wouldn't want to take on that cost and that learning curve. Whenever we have people asking for different size pots, we have people asking for different size cell trays. We need to do different air prune trays. So we would much rather take our money and spend it on making more of those type products than starting something totally new. I mean, that's you don't go from making cars to making blue jeans type of thing, and that's a big swing, but that's about where we're looking at.
I don't understand the question. Are you saying like those ones
Well,
that you can automatically just put in the ground?
I think so. That people want to get away from plastic inherently,
Right.
which is the whole reason what we do is to build plastic so well and trays so well that you don't have to replace them year over year. I certainly see the labor savings of planting right in ground. So something like cow pots, or I mean, what is like Jiffy makes,
That's
the
Jiffy,
pea
yeah.
pots and stuff like that. It just, again, it's not something we really want to
Right.
be involved. Like, what type of binders would be used? And then it's already enough to juggle with what we have going on, and just to get into new kind of tech. Now, I will say we have played around with some more biological type plastic alternatives. They're not quite ready for what we would consider good enough for us. There's some warping issues. There's some cracking issues. They're just they don't play well with the current machines. But even in the short amount of time that we've been here in the United States, we've seen so many advances. But we can't just jump on the first train that comes on, because we have to make sure it's right for our consumers, make sure it's right during the manufacturing process. Sometimes these different plastics melt in different ways and have different effects on the machines, and we can't risk our current molds or the current process or current, big molders that we have, jamming that up with an unknown,
Right.
with a substance that hasn't been fully vetted out yet. So I love the idea about doing things like this. It's just not right for us right now.
Yeah. But like you said, those trays. I mean, the quality of the containers or the pots and the trays that we have, it's great because they last. I mean, we just ran over one not too long ago, and it took a vehicle to run it over for us to finally throw our first
Did you
tray
quit
away.
tearing stuff up, dude? I mean, I don't know what's going on out there.
Somebody was being lazy and they left the tray in the driveway, and somebody decided to drive over it. But it's a good story to show, like, I mean, because we beat the snot out of these trays, so, and that's great, because I remember my first year I was buying all these from the big box stores. They're super thin, and you go to grab it and it cracks in half and all these, and so that it really bothered me, because one, I just bought it. Two, I'm just throwing plastic away. So it's a bittersweet, or it's a struggle, right, dealing with plastic products. But at least this is like you buy it one time and
it's what we said in the beginning.
Decide to run over it.
It's what we said in the beginning of the podcast. There's trade-offs to everything, and to have the best type of material for a certain application, and making sure that you don't have to buy it over and over again. That's kind of our sweet spot.
Yeah.
And next, Jess writes in and would love to see a 9-foot tall tomato pole. The ones at the big box stores are metal or bamboo, never tall enough, and just don't last. A little bit more to that, but a 9-foot tomato pole is, I have to start with where I start with everything else that we design or come up with is in this company, is that how are we going to ship a 9-foot pole? So is it now sectional? And if it's sectional, what's it made out of? How much weight is, you and I know that one tomato plant fully, fruited out is about 15, 16 pounds, depending on the variety. We've weighed stuff at your place before. It's how we test trellis wire. A 9-foot pole, I'm curious to see how you would maintain a vine that's 9 foot tall, which means you'd have to get on a ladder. It's kind of impractical. I would much rather see some type of trellising. Um, if this is a bush type of tomato, do they even get that? So this, now we're getting into the things I really wish we would start with all the time is, what variety of tomato are you doing? If it's not an indeterminate, how tall are these plants actually getting? Why do we need 9 foot
Mhm.
tall is another question. So I've seen people in the field, they'll put like a T structure up, like a telephone pole, and they can run horizontal vines like that. I've seen them use that for, you do it too, that you put shade cloth or
Yeah, yeah,
something like that, but you're able to utilize like a roller hook type of assembly to do a lean and lower version of a tomato
yeah,
without, it's the same reason we suggest people don't trellis up much past what they can reach, because you want to be able to reach that plant. And now we're talking what, 6, 7 feet maybe,
yeah,
and at 9 feet, you have much more area to grow, but you also are going to have to lean and lower that anyway if it's an indeterminate. So maybe back it off at 9 foot. I mean, that's we're going
yeah.
beyond the product now. Now we're getting into the practicalities of farming and the making sure we're growing and operating our structures and our systems as
Yeah.
efficiently as possible. But
I mean, I've never even heard of tomato pole. I mean, like tomato steak, the round green ones, or if it's even like a 3 or 4 foot one for like the Florida weave, like if you're doing field tomatoes or outdoor tomatoes or bush tomatoes where you can weave them together. But I've never seen or heard of anybody. So
well,
maybe
and
if
from
I've
the
got the
rest,
question, I'm sure
it,
everybody
it
else
was it
does.
was a longer email, but
Yeah,
I think we could either look at the poles or we could look at a tomato cage. Which again, tomato
yeah,
cage for me is more of an more of a determinate type of tomato, where the pole would be for a Florida weave or the trellis would be for
yeah,
an indeterminate. Um, I instead of making something that I've never seen before, I would question, let's take a
yeah.
look at, let's back up and see how we're actually growing these
What's the
things.
problem we're trying to solve?
Right,
That's, I think, the
right.
question you got to ask. Because like our outdoor one, we use two T posts. We have 9 foot T posts, but they're spaced 10 feet apart, and then we have a piece of EMT conduit, half-inch conduit that runs between those two, just resting through PVC pipe, and then, like you say, we just attach string to that, and now we've got, we just covered 10 feet with two poles, because otherwise you're going to have a, if I'm understanding this concept, you're going to have a pole for every tomato. Where this is, you could get
Well, and
8 plants in a 10 foot.
I've attempted to install a 6 foot ground post before, which I'm standing on a ladder with a
Yeah,
sledgehammer, somebody holding this up, just like you were having to install a 9 foot
T
T
post. Yeah,
post. I mean, that's not fun. That's not fun
no,
work.
mm,
And so then again, you would have to have almost a 2 foot pole, number one, to ship, number two, to get up there and be able to install it however you're going to
yeah,
install it. There's a lot of assumptions on this question. But if we then have a two-piece pole, is that connection point the weak point? And then if so, again, it's we're not going to make something unless there's a clear demand in the market for it. And this is one of those things where, because I haven't seen it out in the world and on a working farm or even in some gardens, uh, yeah, there you go.
yeah, yeah. There's probably change either your produce, what the variety is, go to bush type. A determinate variety would likely solve a lot of that. You don't have to go up so tall and get the same, you know, unless you're just married to that one plant. But I think then that's going to call
Still a
for,
workaround.
yeah, you have to,
So the next and final question. I'm not going to narrow this down to one because this was asked by several people, but basically saying that we need to sell smaller pack sizes. So like 1, 2, 3. Our smallest pack size generally is 5 on a tray, and then on a pot, like a 2-inch pot, 40 is the smallest. Um, It's not that we don't, but the reason we sell these at the pack sizes we do, and it's a warehousing issue more than anything else. So, for instance, if we create another SKU and we have a 2-pack, a 3-pack, a 1-pack, whatever the case may be, we're adding bays to a warehouse that you've been in the warehouse, man.
Yeah.
We are just packed. We've built, since I came in 2018, we've had 4 or 5 additions to the main warehouse, and then 3 other, and then one of those 3 had another major addition. We have built warehouses as fast as we could. We got another one on the way, but to create 2 new SKUs for 1020s, 2 new SKUs for 1020s with holes, 2 new SKUs for each color microgreen tray, 2 new SKUs for all of the tray variants that we have means base. It also means additional kitting time. It also means additional labels, additional probably custom boxes that we'll have to do. And so by the time we get all that done, what's going to wind up happening is that product, because of the labor involved in such a small package and all of the warehouse space cost us money per square foot, right? And we're a for-profit business. And so we have accounted for how much does a product cost us to warehouse? How much inventory do we have to buy up front, store, ship? Those are all costs that are built in. So if we start selling in these smaller pack sizes, all of that increases, all of it. And that means that something that, we charge $30 for a 10-pack, if we broke it down to 5, or if we sell a 5-pack or a 2-pack, it's probably going to be $25, $28 because those variables are always going to stay the same. The product really doesn't have that much of an effect when you consider also, because of the size of a 1020, most of our packages right out of the gate at the smallest quantity that we have is considered oversized by UPS, FedEx. So even if we sell one, that's still an oversized package because of the dimension of the box. And so that means that cost does not go down. And so we, instead of hearing about it on the other side going, why are you charging $10 for a tray instead of $5 for a tray? It's like, because there's all these other expenses built into the cost of this. And you'd be way more madder at us for that than you would if you just had a couple of spare trays, maybe give them to a friend. Maybe, I keep stuff in trays all the time that's not farming stuff. So find another use for the tray and just understand that it's not us not wanting to. It's just, it's physically impossible.
It's a sweet spot.
It is a sweet spot.
You've identified the sweet spots in these areas. I was thinking the same thing. It's like, to sell 10 or 5 is likely the same amount of cost apart from the overhead of the extra material you have in there. But so it's just a practical thing. So
for sure.
Yeah. Give them away to your neighbors, extra ones.
Accidents happen. You leave it out, you run it over.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
Yeah. But I tell you, we have gotten pretty creative on using those trays though. I think I was telling Brad last time he was here, the perforated hole one.
Right.
I couldn't find a strainer for our microgreen seeds because we always just put them in a bucket, and then I have hijacked my wife's big colander or strainer. Colander,
what was it called? No, let's dive down. What is it?
I don't even know what it's called. What is it? Colander? What's
colander?
Colander, whatever. That thing that you strain stuff with. Yeah, colander.
Tupperware.
Yeah. But so all of a sudden I just had this epiphany. I'm like, I've got those, your 10, 22, 2.5 inch trays, the perforated bottoms. I dumped all our, 2.5, 3 pounds of sweet peas in there. It was just like perfect because it was a strainer. So
it's one of those things. If you get a few extra trays, I promise you will find something to do with them.
We have, you couldn't imagine the stuff we've got in them. Toys, feed for chickens. I mean, we've got them all over the farm right now.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
All right, folks. Well, that's it for this episode. If you would like to submit a question in for the next one, it's podcast@bootstrapfarmer.com. I love answering questions. We love getting feedback. I feel like we don't have to think of things to actually do content over. This is the very best it could possibly be for me is answering questions. So podcast@bootstrapfarmer.com. Carl, Paris Natural Farms, Paris, Texas. Thanks for your input, and we will see you on the next episode.